Hello, I'm Jake Mooney,
And I'm Will Fitzgerald.
and this is our report on the media portrayal of polar bears in regards to climate change.
Climate change, by definition, according to Ecolife, is the long-term shift in weather patterns in a specific region or globally.
So, how are polar bears really affected by climate change?
Polar bears are affected by climate change in these ways. It reduces their access to food, diminishes their body conditions, lowers their cub survival rates, increases their chances to drown, and limits their access to denning areas.
Today, we are here to tell you how this really affects the polar bear population.
Just to get everyone up to speed, the world has undergone an overall drastic climate change, a rise of 0.6 degrees Celsius, which is the equivalent to 1 degree Fahrenheit, over the last 2 centuries. Shifting our focus to the Arctic region, the average temperature has risen twice as fast as the rest of the world. The amount of carbon dioxide has increased by 35% since the Industrial Revolution. This is mostly due to the fact of the burning of fossil fuels and the clearing of land.
According to Michael Bastach of the Daily Caller News Foundation, media outlets have been reporting that polar bear numbers in Beaufort Sea, north of Alaska, have fallen 40% in just 10 years as Arctic sea ice melts and takes away hunting grounds. The Guardian ran the headline, "Polar bear population in frozen sea north of Alaska falls 40% in 10 years." The paper cited a study, U.S. Geological Survey researchers, along with Canadian and U.S. researchers, claiming that there were only 900 polar bears in the Chukchi Sea region in 2010, 40% lower than previous measures.
AFP echoed The Guardian, saying that bears in the Arctic suffered sharp declines in the first decade of this century, losing about 40% of their population. The Guardian wrote that winter ice has become more thin and increasingly mobile over the past few decades, leading it to break more frequently, creating rough and jumbled ice conditions that are thought to make it more difficult for bears to capture seals. The paper did acknowledge the Beaufort's polar bear recovery, but noted that sub-adult populations have continued to struggle. Crockford says the study's authors acknowledge the 2004 to 2006 decline in Beaufort Sea polar bear numbers was caused by thick spring ice condition, a condition that also caused a polar bear population dip in the mid-1970s. The low survival may have been caused by a combination of factors that could be difficult to unravel, said Jeff Bromain, the study's lead author, and why survival improved at the end of the study is unknown.
Polar bears were once the poster child of the environmental movement. They were depicted as starving and fighting for survival in a melting Arctic habitat because of man-made global warming. Polar bears were listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act because of global warming, the first animal to be listed because of potential global temperature rises. A trending video on Twitter shows a mother polar bear eating one of her cubs, reported by the Washington Post. The title reads, "A polar bear killed and ate one of its own kind? Is climate change to blame?" The media has labeled climate change as the sole reason polar bears are becoming cannibalistic, when in reality it is not abnormal for polar bears to kill and sometimes eat their own kind, according to Rob Waugh at Britain's Daily Mail.
Over the last 2 centuries, the world's global mean temperature has increased by 0.6 degrees Celsius, again equivalent to 1 degree Fahrenheit, and it seems that the current trend goes beyond the natural climate variability. According to the GreenFacts organization, in the Arctic, average temperatures have risen almost twice as fast as the rest of the world, and climate changes are being felt particularly intensely. This warming is attributed in good part to human activities. Indeed, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased by 35% since the Industrial Revolution, mostly due to the human activities such as burning fossil fuels and the clearing of land.
Continuing, greenhouse gases released are projected to cause significant changes in climate conditions. An increase of 1.4 to 5.8 degrees Celsius and global average temperatures between 2000 and 2100, as well as changes in ocean currents, sea levels, and in the amount and the distribution of precipitation. Such changes would have significant impacts on human communities as well as ecosystems. Global temperatures are expected to increase further during the 21st century. In the Arctic, this warming is expected to be substantially greater than the global average, and the following changes are expected over the current century. The average annual temperatures are projected to rise by 3 to 7 degrees Celsius, that's 5 to 13 degrees Fahrenheit, with the greatest warming occurring in the winter months. Precipitation is projected to increase by roughly 20%. Sea ice is expected to continue to decline significantly, as you can see in this graph, reflecting less solar radiation and thereby increasing regional and global warming. The area of Arctic land covered by snow is expected to decrease by 10 to 20%. What does this mean for animals in the Arctic?
Polar bears give birth and hunt on sea ice, and they need it to travel from one region to another. Survival of mothers and cubs in the spring depends on the mother's hunting success, which, in turn, depends on the stability and extent of sea ice. Less winter sea ice means that female polar bears have to go longer without food, which impacts their fat stores and, in turn, their reproductive success. Climate change is also likely to increase bear deaths directly. For example, increased frequency and intensity of spring rains is already causing some dens to collapse, resulting in the death of females and cubs. Earlier, spring breakup of ice could separate traditional den sites from spring feeding areas, and young cubs cannot swim long distances from dens to feeding areas. Polar bears are unlikely to survive as a species if there is an almost complete loss of summer sea ice cover, which is projected to occur before the end of this century by some climate models. The only foreseeable option that polar bears would have is to adapt a land-based summer lifestyle, but competition, risk of hybridization with brown and grizzly bears, and increased human interactions would then present additional threats to their survival as a species. The loss of polar bears is likely to have significant and rapid consequences for the ecosystems that they currently occupy.
In conclusion, the media often has tendencies to exaggerate and make a story a bigger deal, when only it's a small piece of a large puzzle. In this case, that large puzzle is climate change.
As you've heard in this presentation, a number of news sources such as the Washington Post and the Guardian can bring about a number of misconceptions in regards to climate change and its effects on polar bears.
In the video of the mother eating the cub, the Washington Post, who posted it, used fear-inducing tactics by posting a graphic picture to grab the attention of its subscribers and all media outlets.
This tells us that the polar bear lifestyle is more unknown than it is known. The media only plays a small part in educating the world about this animal and the effects climate change has on it.
My name is Jake Mooney,
And I'm Will Fitzgerald.
and we would like to thank you for tuning in to the polar bears and climate change. Thank you.
Thanks.